Let's talk about sending your edit to a sound mixer. I've received AAFs from video editors over the years, and so often I go to open it up in Pro Tools and the timeline is just a mess. And it's not always their fault. There's deadlines and producers hanging over their shoulders. But if you have the time, here's what you can do to make it as professional as possible. I'm Nick Sanders. This is Video Deconstructed. Although you definitely do not need to do some of the things I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain how to prepare your sequence and export your sound for mixing in the safest way to avoid problems and look as professional as possible. Isn't that a lovely thing? This is an edit for a 30-second Christmas TV spot that I worked on, and I've removed the video for the sake of clarity and to not violate any copyrights and all that stuff. Although there isn't a lot of audio in the tracks, the same concepts apply for a larger mix. I've color-coded the clip so you can see what's going on here. So the green is VO. The pink is camera sound, the blue here is sound effects, and the purple is music. So that's the first thing you want to keep in mind for sending your edit off to a sound mixer, is to keep your tracks organized. So although I do have them organized in what you could say is the standard way of doing it, I don't have the tracks named over here. So that would be one thing that I would do, is name your tracks, because if this is going to go over to Pro Tools, it'll take the track names with it, and that's always nice. The next thing I would try to avoid is mixing stereo audio with mono. Typically, this issue comes up with an editor who is dropping in sound effects and they aren't paying attention to whether the file is stereo or mono. They just drop it in anywhere and move on. If you keep all of your mono sound effects on separate tracks from your stereo, your sound mixer will love you. So looking at this one, if you take a look at this track, for example, you can tell that this clip here is mono by the fact that there's just that one waveform. But as you scroll down, we got the stereo and then mono, 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 and then over here, stereo, stereo, mono, stereo, mono. So what I would suggest is rename this track sound effects mono, and we've got mono, 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 and this stereo one, we can move it, and if you've got no room on your stereo track, maybe rename this one sound effects 1, and then add a track, rename that. To create these tracks, I'm just right clicking in the gray area to the right of the name, add track. So I can click and drag this down, and if you look above, you see the timecode window that pops up. I can see that I have not taken this clip out of sync. There, it's 6 frames too early. If I slide it too far to the right, okay, that's 1 second and 15 frames too late. I have my snap turned on. That is under sequence, snap in timeline. S is the shortcut. Now I can look at my other track where I have stereo, stereo, this mono. We could move up to here, except it might get in the way of this one. So if we zoom in on this, it's fading down pretty far. You might be able to just trim this and then move it up. So now we have one more mono right here at the end. This guy here. Another way to move a clip up or down without taking it out of sync is to hold the Option key and press the up or down arrow. In this case, I'm going to press the up arrow, and it'll just move it up without sliding it any frames left or right. So now I have all mono on this track, stereo here, and then this one extra stereo clip down here. Now I'm going to show you how to add a 2-pop to your sequence. I found a lot of editors don't even know what that is. Sometimes it doesn't matter and you don't need to do it. It just depends on the project. So if you do have a project that needs it, here you go. I've added some stock footage to help demonstrate this next part. Zoom your timeline out so you can see all of your clips. So if you're zoomed in, you can hit the / button above your return key to zoom out your timeline all the way. Select all of your clips by using the shortcut Command A on the Mac and Control A on the PC. You'll need your sequence active. On the numeric keypad of your keyboard, tap the plus key and you should see a white window open up in the upper left corner of your sequence panel. Type in 200 and then tap the enter key on the numeric keypad. You should see all of your clips move to the right by 2 seconds. Place your playhead at the very beginning of your sequence and see what timecode is reading out in your playhead position. We're going to make that say 00595800. Click on the drop-down menu for your sequence and select Start Time. Type in 00595800. You don't have to hit the colon. And now you should see if your playhead is all the way to the left at the beginning of your sequence timeline, it should say 00595800 as your playhead position at the front of the sequence. Now, typically editors place a single frame of 1K tone and a single frame of something, a white dot, a logo, something at the very first frame of the sequence. With Premiere, the easiest thing to do is generate color bars and tone. So go to the project panel and right-click in the gray area below your sequence and files. Go to New Item, HD Bars and Tone. You can leave all the defaults here. This should match your sequence. Hit OK. And then you should see in your project panel a new file that shows up that says HD Bars and Tone. Go back to your sequence and with your playhead at the very beginning of your sequence, tap the I and O key to mark one frame in and out. And to help you see that, after you've made sure your playhead is all the way to the very front, tap the plus key a few times so you can really see that blue line right there represents one frame. And when I tap the I and then the O right next to it, it's marked just that one frame there. Now make sure that video track 1 and audio track 1 is set for the destination of this one frame of bar and tone. You do that by going over here in your track target area and making sure all 4 of these guys are on. And now you can just drag the HD bars and tone over to your program monitor and highlight the top area where it says overlay, and when you let go you should see it show up in your sequence. Now your sequence should have the one frame of bars and tone at the very top, and then exactly at 1 hour should be your first frame of video. So when I drag my playhead forward, I get to the first frame, and here we are at 1 hour. And if I go to the very end of my sequence by tapping the end key, remember this was a 30-second commercial, and if you look up here, we're right at 30. I back up one frame, we're at 29:23. So another thing you're going to want to do is to put a timecode burn-in on a reference movie that you're going to send to your sound mixer. To do that, you're going to go to your project panel, go into the gray area below where you can right-click, New Item, and create a transparent piece of video. You can just leave all the defaults. That's going to match your sequence, your timeline that you're in, and I just call it timecode. You can right-click here next to that, add another track, and so we would be putting your timecode above your video. Drag this out to the length. I usually go a little bit past the end. So right now it's not doing anything. You can put a timecode effect on this by selecting your transparent video clip, going up to the effects panel. Also under window, you can find it right here, effects panel, Shift 7. And then if you type in your search timecode under video, you will have this timecode effect. And you can just drag that down on top of your transparent video clip, and you will automatically see timecode show up here. Now, if you look over here in my playhead position, these times do not match. I'm going to drag my playhead all the way back to the front. So my sequence timeline is starting at 00595800, but this timecode on this transparent clip is starting at 59:56:09. So to set this up correctly, what you want to do is go to your effects control panel. You can click on the timecode transparent video and either use the shortcut Shift 5, or you should find your effects controls up here. And then if you scroll down, here's the timecode effect that you've added. And this is where you can change the position or the size. The main thing that you want to change is your timecode source. So we want to generate the timecode and tell Premiere what time we want to start at. My timeline starts at 00:59:58, so we want to make our starting timecode match that. And we are at, in this particular case, my timeline is 23:976, so 24 frames per second. And now you can see we're all matching. So I can just randomly click anywhere. I'm at 1304, 1304, 1304, click down here, 2117, 2117. So we match in both spots, the burn-in as well as the playhead. So when you create a reference movie for the sound mixer, H.264 is probably okay, but you should ask the producer or the post supervisor or preferably the sound mixer themselves. They might want ProRes or some other file format. The file that you're going to export for your sound mixer is an AAF or an OMF, sometimes both. Be sure to leave large handles. This is audio after all, so the file sizes are tiny. I usually leave 240 frames. That equals 10 seconds if your sequence is 24 frames per second. The primary reason is you want to give your sound mixer the ability to tweak any audio clips. If an emergency change comes up, the sound mixer will have enough handles to make an edit without necessarily having to get you involved, and you can keep working on the 10 other edits that you might be in the middle of. You can also just include the full audio clips when you export, and I'll show you that in the export settings. If I was going to export this sequence as an AAF for a sound mixer, I would want the sequence active, or if I'm up in the project panel, I can have the sequence highlighted here. Go to the file menu, go down here to export, and you have AAF here. I never checked the mixdown video option. I've heard some sound mixers have had issues with importing your files when the video mixdown is included. Use tape sources when present. If you are actually using tape sources, you can play around with it and let me know in the comments. You're going to want this enable turned on, otherwise you're not going to get any audio at all. Render audio clip effects. If you have audio effects, EQ, reverb, etc. on any of your audio clips, you might want this render audio clip effects turned on. Were you working with a creative director who was trying to shape the sound of the mix with you, and that direction needs to be heard by the sound mixer? Maybe your rough mix in your reference movie you're going to make will be enough. A safe thing to do is to check both render audio clip effects and include copies without effects. But it really depends on the project how much it matters. And in this case, I'm at 48K 16-bit, and generally I've always chosen the embed audio when I export. I've never had a sound mixer request separate audio, so embed audio would be your best option. The format, I always choose broadcast wave, but they might request AIFF. And then here's where you can trim the audio files, and you want to leave some amount of handles on here. Again, I would recommend something around 240, or you could just do complete audio files. So it's really up to you as to whether you need to trim audio files or not. Same thing if you were going to export an OMF, you can have your timeline selected or your sequence here, go up to File, Export, OMF. This is an older format and some people still use it, but the settings are pretty much the same. If you are having issues exporting your AAF, getting errors, problems of some kind, some things you might want to try would be duplicating your sequence, and in the copy just delete all of the video since you don't need that as part of the AAF. Remember, you're going to send a separate reference movie. As much as it would suck, I have heard that some Premiere editors had to remove all of their audio transitions, fade in, fade out, to get Premiere to export the AAF they needed. I've never had that issue, and I would say you should do a test on a small chunk of your edit, a duplicated chunk of the sequence, before you go spending a ton of time removing all of your fades. So now if you look at the sequence, if we go all the way to the top, we're on the very first frame at 59:58, and if I move one frame to the right, we have black. So just a single frame. If I were to play this, there we go, right into the edit. If you happen to have access to Pro Tools, another great thing to do is check your work. Go into Pro Tools, open up the AAF or the OMF that you've created and see how everything looks. That's a great way to catch any mistakes that might make you look like you don't know what you're doing. Thanks for checking out Video Deconstructed. I'm Nick Sanders. It's time to click on things, subscribe, hit the bell, thumbs up, thumbs down, lots of comments, write a letter to the editor, all that good stuff.